Have you ever been frustrated while you're using a product that at one point you loved and then you contact support and that becomes an even more frustrating experience because after a while it seems like they either don't want to help you or they have no idea what they're talking about? Yeah. So that's been my experience with Camtasia 2021 for Mac recently, and while as a tech channel it's not my intention to dump on products needlessly, at the same time, I feel like as a tech reviewer, I'm not really doing my audience justice and I'm not really having integrity myself if when I see a glaring problem, I don't talk about it. And so I have to do that candidly here because this is an issue that I feel like probably affects all Mac users that are trying to use Camtasia. And my experience today was a real example of where the company clearly is not training their support team to even understand what is being promised on the website and what supposedly comes with the software. They also just don't seem to stand by the product when the going gets tough. So first, let's do a little context. So up until this last year, I've been a Windows user. I've used Camtasia on Windows for several years, both on desktop computers and on Surface tablets. Had a fairly good experience with it. When I saved the project files in the TSC proj format, that's the default for it. They were pretty slim. They were like a few hundred kilobytes. It was nice. There was the option, of course, to tell it to do a standalone project that would save all of the media files and the video and the photos and whatnot right into that project file so that you could transport that one file and open it on another computer. But I never really needed that, and probably a lot of people don't if you're mainly editing on one computer, and it was nice to have the option to not do that and have very lightweight project files that pretty much only contained your timeline data. So when I first switched to Mac, the license that I already had for the Windows version entitled me to Camtasia for Mac 3. Started using it, fairly good experience, but I noticed two things. One, it was saving project files in what the website calls their outdated format, which is CM project instead of TSC project. And I noticed that the project files were gigantic. They were like between 500 and 800 megabytes each project that I worked on. So at first I thought, I wonder if it's either A, erroneously trying to make it a standalone project and saving the whole thing into it, or maybe just it's that it's using this outdated format. And there was a reason they switched to the TSC project format that was way more lightweight. That happened many years ago with Microsoft Word, where when they changed it from doc to docx format, the documents pretty much halved in size when you saved them. So they obviously made some things more efficient. Wondered if that was what was happening. So I'm like, okay, I'm using an outdated version of this for Mac. Let me check their update log and see if the new version solves this. Well, as you can see in this screenshot, they specifically say on one of their help pages that the most recent updates of this became consistent across both Mac and Windows, that when you're above version 9 for Windows or 8 for Mac, both of them use the TSC project file format. Great, I thought, reading that. Well, then if I upgrade my version and pay for it again, then I can have the Mac version using this new file format, and that'll solve my problem. It didn't. I updated to the new 2021, still saved in the old format, still had gigantic files. Okay, so it's time to reach out to support, I thought. I'll ask them. So my question to them was basically twofold. One, why is my 2021 version on Mac still saving in this outdated CM project format? And does that have to do with why my files are so gigantic? And then two, what can I do about it to bring it more in line with how it was on my experience with Windows? Unfortunately, the answers I kept getting were like, either the person was making no attempt to actually understand what I was asking, or they didn't know the answer, and they didn't want to say that, so they just threw like answers to something at me and hoped it would make me go away. Because over and over again, this person was just telling me, well, yeah, on Mac it likes to include the media bin files in it, and if you go into this drop-down menu and click on these 5 things, you can see the file structure internally of how it's displaying all those media files. And I'm like, that would be useful if that's what I was trying to do, but I don't care. I don't want it to save all the media bin files. My question is, how do I make it stop doing that? Oh, well, it just saves them. Well, it just saves them, is all he kept saying. At one point, he asked me what version of Camtasia for Mac I was using, so I got hopeful for a moment, thinking, good, if you're asking me about version, that implies that maybe that's going to get us somewhere, that when I tell you I'm using the latest version, you'll be able to see, oh yeah, per our own literature on the website, that version of the software should not be saving in this format. So maybe something got wonky when you upgraded the software where some part of it was still holding on to like the old stuff and using the old version or something. But no, after I delivered the answer to his question, that never came up in our chat again. So then I asked him, look, according to your own FAQ pages, it explains, even for Mac, that there's the checkbox when you're saving your project file to create a standalone project, and your own help files explain telling it to create a standalone project does save all of the media from the bin into the project file and make it rather large. The implication, of course, is that not checking that box doesn't do that. But my experience, I told him, is that even when I don't check that box, the project file is still gigantic. Why is that happening? All he kept doing was talking in circles. Well, it's because Mac likes to save everything into the media bin. I'm like, okay, so you're saying it's like an operating system limitation, like Mac somehow the way it works just makes it do this option no matter what? And if that's the case, well, why do you have this checkbox that's now very confusing in the settings for this when the answer is it doesn't make a difference because it's going to do whatever it wants anyway? No answer to that question either. Then he kept insisting to me, well, you see, you're getting confused because the TSC project format is what Windows uses, but Mac uses the CM project format. And I brought to his attention, well, according to your website, that's not true. That as of the last version update, both of them used the same file format. Silence. Didn't know. So we ultimately went nowhere. I got frustrated, and I just basically told him, I know you're trying to help me, but I feel like you're just answering questions I've not asked. You're not actually addressing the core of what I'm getting at here. And he kept telling me at one point, well, what you're saying doesn't matter because Mac will always just want to save the media bin, so it doesn't make a difference. And I said, well, it does make a difference if I don't want to blow my whole hard drive. As a person who makes videos on a regular basis, you know, it's very lightweight like it was on Windows to have 300 kilobyte project files that keep adding up, to have 800 megabyte project files that keep adding up. That's going to take up a lot of space unnecessarily. And what's weird about it is it's not even exactly like it is saving all of the media bin files, because in a lot of cases I'm working with source document or source video files that are several gigs large. If it was really saving the whole source video into the project, shouldn't the project be several gigabytes? And it's not. Why is it like 700 or 800 megabytes? That size doesn't even make sense. It suggests that it's not really saving all the media bin files into it, but it's also doing something that the Windows version doesn't do, making it literally 100 to 150 times the file size. That just needlessly wastes a lot of space, because now you're like, I've got to actually store the original video files and the audio files and all the pictures, and then I'm storing a project file that it contains the same stuff, supposedly, again, for no reason, for every project I create. And the only answer is to go behind myself at a certain point and just delete these project files as I think I don't need them anymore. It's not a huge deal to do that, I guess, but knowing that that wasn't a requirement on Windows and that their own literature on their website says that that's not how this is supposed to work is really disappointing. And I ended up telling the guy, like, look, if ultimately what you're telling me is that there's some limitations on Mac, that this just doesn't work this way or something, fine. But I guess what you're also telling me is that in this way, Camtasia for Mac is a crappy experience and nothing is going to be done about it. And all he responded with was, well, you should click on this link and submit this feedback to our internal tech team and we'll bear this in mind for some future update. And I'm thinking, look, I'm not trying to be difficult, but after all of these version revisions that you've done that involved gutting the whole program, because one of the latest updates that they did, they were proudly talking about for Mac that it was totally Apple Silicon M1 compatible now. Well, they had to make a lot of changes under the hood to make it compatible with M1. So if you're putting that degree of attention into updating this app for Mac, why is there still this glaring issue of, whoops, we're making it save project files in this needlessly gigantic format for no apparent reason that we're not doing in Windows, we're just doing in Mac? I don't know. Why should the tech team even need to be told that? That should be a given. Who would want that? Who would want to just be forced to save gigantic project files and blow up their whole hard drive for nothing? I just ended up very disappointed at the end of this as a person who's used Camtasia for several years and has mostly had a good experience with it, but this experience with support just showed me you have stuff blatantly on your website that the support team is totally unaware of. You have promises being made about what each version comes with that it evidently does not actually come with, so I feel misled. These things were the very reason I spent $100+ again to buy a new license for the new 2021 version versus the version 3 that I was otherwise using just fine. The only reason I spent that money was because stuff on the website very much clearly made it sound like exactly what I was looking to happen would happen. That would be different than version 3. The reality seems, nope, it's exactly the same as version 3, and if you ask anybody at the company about it, they either have no idea what's going on or they deny it. That just seems shady to me. It's unfortunate. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. I'm not trying to talk shit. But just being straight up with you, that seems really unfortunate to me. And as a tech reviewer, I'm not going to say don't use Camtasia, but I am at a point where I'm saying it's not clear to me anymore if Camtasia is the right app for me long term, especially now as a Mac user. And I think the next time I am looking to spend some money on a video editing suite, I will be looking somewhere else. Both for a company with a little bit better support for Macs and maybe a company with a better track record of standing behind their products. Hope that was useful for you guys, and if you have experiences of your own, either that are similar to this or maybe some proposed solutions, I welcome them in the comments. If this was helpful, before you go, please click like or subscribe if you want more of this content. Otherwise, cheers.